Hello everyone out there, this is HalfBakedSims again, back after an extended hiatus. We are back in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We had an extended break. This is, after all, just a hobby of mine, and recording the videos and posting them on YouTube is the hobby within the hobby, so if I was able to get away from work or other life events and do some flight simming, it wasn't conducive for me to record it as well. It was just too much time. So now we've got some time back, things have settled down. I thought we would jump back into Microsoft Flight Simulator because I haven't made a video in Microsoft Flight Simulator in a long time. And you know, I've been enjoying X-Plane, but X-Plane's gotten to the point where it crashes more times than it runs, not during flight, but just starting it up. It takes me about 30 minutes just to get the stupid thing running. And I'm kind of tired of it. And we've hit the point in Microsoft Flight Simulator where there are, besides the MD-11, which is coming later this year, and a good 747 and a good 767, we've hit the point where there's just no point to fly X-Plane if X-Plane doesn't want to work or have updated graphics. It looks terrible. So as you can see, though, we are in a cool new plane that just released yesterday for Microsoft Flight Simulator. It is the ATR72 or the 72-6 or the 42-something. I can't remember what the words are or the letters. Basically, they're the same plane. This is the stretched version of the smaller version of it. You get both when you buy it. If you have the Premium Deluxe or Deluxe Edition of the game, you get a 30% discount. I did not get that discount when I bought it because I bought it the second that it dropped on the store and they had not added the discount yet. But I'm not going to lose it over $7 because, yes, this add-on is only 20 bucks. And if you get the discount, it is $13 for two planes that I think are really, really fun to fly around in. There's a lot of contention with it on the forums and in the flight sim community. People are, you know, there's people that love it, there's people that hate it, but I think that they made a really good decision to launch this for $20 instead of a more pricey $60 like the CRJs that they launched way back when. I think that was like right after the game came out almost. They have the CRJ 7 through 1000s. Those are also Asobo Microsoft collaborations, and those planes weren't worth 60 bucks. I've bought them full price. I've flown them a while. They've kind of been abandoned. They're at the point where they're just not being updated, and I don't think it was worth it. So if you're going to spend some money on a regional plane, I would spend it on the ATR. It's not perfect. There's some gripes that I have with it, mainly due to glitches. The plane itself flies pretty well. It's very wonky. It's very different than anything I've flown before. Usually when I get a new plane, I can hop in, have the thing started up and off the ground within 30 minutes. This one took me a good hour and a half just to get the thing started. And that was just because it's unlike anything else I've flown. It's not like the Dash 8. I've flown that a lot in X-Plane. It is a lot like the Dash 8, but it's not at the same time. It's a completely different thing. As you can see, we've already had some awesome liveries get updated onto FlightSim.to that look great. I opted for the white and black instead of all black New Zealand livery just because I think it looks better, honestly. I don't know why, but I like the white and black. I think it just looks sleeker. And we're in for a treat today. We're going to fly in New Zealand. Part of the reason I was so excited for the ATR is a lot of these short flights that you see in real life, you know, under an hour. It's usually a 737-700, or it's an E175, which we do have. I'll do a video on that one as well. That one has more problems than this one does. That one's not as complete a product as this is even, but that's for a different video. Or the CRJ, and I've mentioned the CRJ isn't fun to fly. The E175 has its own problems. Flying a 737 gets kind of old after a while, so we were kind of stuck. You know, if I wanted to go do some Air Alaska flights, and, you know, jump around 30-minute flights island hopping in Hawaii or something like that. In real life, they use an ATR. They use a prop plane like this, or a Dash 8 or a Dash 7. They don't use jet engines for that. And this is the first real one that I have flown in the simulator that I've really liked. So enough with that. We will talk more about the ATR and its successes and shortcomings as we get into the air. But for now, I think we should hop into the cockpit. As you can see, there is an EFB, something that PMDG has taken over a year to still not give us, is in a $20 airplane. You know, it's a basic one, but it still has a calculator. It still has options and maintenance. That's another gripe of mine, is that I can't believe PMDG can't even throw something basic like this into their planes. They're very stubborn and waiting to throw in their finished product, and I think it's a dumb call. Let's see, what else do we have to pull up here? Let's pull up our checklist, because that is something I have needed desperately over the last couple flights. Like I said, this plane is unlike anything else I have flown. It doesn't behave like you'd think it would. It doesn't follow standard procedures. And let's see here, report from SimBrief. So today we are flying from Queenstown to Christchurch. It's a pretty short flight, something like an hour, I think. Yeah, an hour and 19 minutes. So pretty quick flight. Give us plenty of time to talk about the plane. And we'll go from there. So the first thing we got to do here is obviously get the batteries on. I'll turn on the flashlight so you can see. That doesn't really help. So the battery is located here. Battery master switch takes a second to pop on. And then you got to come down here to the aircraft, and you got to manually put the ground power on every time. Come back up. As you can see, stuff starting to light up. We'll hit the external power for both. This is the AC, and this is just the battery to keep the thing going. We will, let's see, we'll keep our nav, we'll turn our beacon light off. We will turn on the seatbelt, emergency exit, and smoking signs, and the windshield de-ice sign. Okay, so as you can see, kind of by this upper panel and this stuff down here, this is a weird mesh of a lot of different planes. Up here, it kind of looks like you know, a Dash 8 or just a generic. This is a very generic MCP. Up here, this looks very Airbusy. Which is really nice for this plane. You just, you know, press the buttons that are lit up until they turn off, and then if anything's lit up, you know something's going wrong. And then down here is a whole different mess. I will say, I will caution you, don't expect to put this thing in the simulator, plug it in and go. The throttle calibration took me a while. You have to, it's a whole new thing. It doesn't have an auto throttle. It has a power management. So you're kind of caught in between just a generic, like my Bravo throttle quadrant and the TCA Airbus. I use the Airbus one because you get some notches. Basically how it works is you've got max power, which is all the way up, but then you've also got your ramp power, which is this red right here. And they're very close together. And you want to make sure that you have both assigned, because if you go toga, if you go all the way on your throttle, it overlaps with max power and it doesn't work. So you've got to have max power, ramp, and notch. So ramp is basically kind of like your flex takeoff, and notch is like your climb power, and then the rest would be manual throttle. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. One of the main issues that this aircraft faces that I'm hoping that we don't run into, which I believe we just ran into. Nope. Let's see here. I was scared for a second I was going to have to restart this whole thing. One of the main issues that this aircraft faces right now for me is the panels freezing. It'll happen randomly. I haven't really figured out exactly what happens. I think it has something to do with the FMS. If you press a button that it doesn't really know what to do with, it'll just freeze every single panel. It'll freeze the EFB, and it'll freeze some of the overhead panel. The plane will still fly. You can still fly it around. You can still move the controls around. You can move the throttles, but you're basically flying blind because these panels will all be stuck on the instance where it got stuck. So if you're on climb, you'll never know your altitude. You'll never know your speed. You'll never be able to change your route. It'll still follow the route until it runs out, basically. But yeah, if you get a panel freeze, the only way to fix it is to restart it, which is stupid. And it can like I said, it can happen at any point. It can happen in the middle of an hour-long flight. It can happen on takeoff. Like, it can happen when you're setting everything up. I haven't diagnosed exactly what causes it yet. So let's see here. Let's get our altimeter set. We'll just hit B. You can also set it from over here. And this stuff right here reminds me a lot of a CRJ. So you've got some crazy stuff over here. Your panels remind me of a CRJ. This reminds me of a CRJ. And then down here is actually where you change these displays around. So you can actually display your systems, your map, just random stuff that's not available yet. Video feed for the cargo hold, information like that. This I haven't figured out yet either. You can actually kind of click on it to change screens. In real life, I don't know how you do that, but if you click around on this thing too much, it'll just spaz out and go to different screens, so I prefer not to click on it and just leave it in that map mode. Alright, that is enough messing around with that, so we will turn on the beacon light. One of the first major hurdles you will have to cross with this plane is the fact that it does not have an APU, but it does have a way to generate power without a ground power unit. It's the weirdest thing, but it makes a ton of sense. Basically, what you can do, so we'll go up here. So you got this thing called a prop brake, and it's going to cover. So you flip this on before you do anything else, and you engage your prop brake. And what this is going to do is it's going to stop the prop from spinning, and it says exactly what it's going to do. And this will stop the prop from spinning, but it won't stop the engine from running. And as we all know, an APU is just an engine, so in order to get your APU-like stuff going on, what you'll do is you'll turn on the engine fuel pump 2 up here, and then it's in the checklist, which British Av Geek has provided for us, it just says hotel mode. It took me forever to figure this out. I had to watch a couple videos and other streamers. Basically, what you do is you're going to start engine number 2, come down here, go fuel cutoff to feather, and it's going to start engine number 2. And when it starts engine number 2, you can see some gas coming out there. When this is done, this functions as our APU. This is how we start the rest of the plane. It's a very wonky system, but it makes a lot of sense because the ATRs are supposed to be small and light, and an APU is big and heavy. So putting an APU in these planes would defeat the purpose of the plane being able to get in and out of small airports. So they opted to use this system, which I think is really smart and shows how smart people can be. So, all right. Once that's on, we got to go up and turn on the hydraulic pumps to keep the hydraulic power going, and then we turn on the oxygen. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull up our sim brief panel, fetch our flight plan, and our cruising altitude is 190. So we're just going to go ahead and set that because it takes a while. There's no accelerator and there's no option to go by more than 100 feet at a time on this. So you're kind of stuck just holding down the Alt Select knob to the right until you get all the way up. 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 9. Okay. Then we come down to the FMC. Now this is actually pretty nice that they've custom modeled this entire thing. It does cause the freezing issues, but I give them credit for doing this instead of just having a generic one like in the CRJ. So you'll do your position initialization like that. Don't have to worry about nav data. Flight plan. So we are NZQN to NZCH. Oops. Pop that in there. It takes a second. Don't click anything because I'm pretty sure that'll freeze it. There you go. And you'll execute. Okay, so we come in here. We choose our runway. We're off of runway 05. The Gixley 1 departure. Transition to Timjo. And then execute that. So now we've got our departure in, and I'm not going to mess more with this until we get to cruising altitude, then we'll put on our arrival. So once you've done that, you've actually got to come back here, go back to initialization, put in your weight. So your weight, I know that the screen, the EFB has a screen here for your stuff. You can't actually put it in here. I think it's kind of, it's nice. It gives you all your speeds, your V speeds, your trim, center of gravity, everything here. But you do have to input everything either through the FMC or through the generic weight and balance. Sorry, 0 fuel weight, 439 or 792. And yes, I do know that this is in New Zealand. They use the metric system, but I have it set up for Imperial, so that's what we're going to use. 4151 on the fuel input. So there you go. It gives us our CG, our trim. That's all set over here as well. Everything is input and ready to go. So we can set our trim just by binding a key to it. Makes this wild noise. It sounds like Pac-Man basically. Kind of like yeah, Pac-Man when he's blue or when he's invincible. So we will turn on our DC generators and our AC generators. So this takes a second. You want to make sure that you've got electrical power coming from, see how we've got electrical power coming from the what is it called, the right engine here. Pretty sure now we can turn off our external power. Yep. So you got to make sure that you've got this thing running for a minute and that you turn on the DC generator here before you disable external power. If you disable external power too quickly, all your screens turn off and take like 5 minutes to turn back on, so you don't want to do that. So we will get rid of ground power in the wheel chocks. It's just going to give me a ton of warnings here. Basically, this is everything we have to do to start the plane up. But to continue starting, so we'll turn on fuel pumps, and we'll turn on our de-icer stuff here. So to continue setting up the plane for takeoff, we could push back here. Let's see if we can get this to work. Yeah. That's the only thing that's stupid, is that GSX doesn't like the ATR, because as soon as you start the right engine, which is technically your APU, it reads that as engine started. So it thinks that your engines are on and you can't push back. So, like I was saying, to continue turning on the plane, all we got to do is flip off the prop brake, and you'll see that right propeller starts spinning because the engine's been going, like I said. And then we'll bring the condition lever to auto, and that'll turn on the prop fully. So now we've got our right engine on. You kind of half start it, stop it with the prop brake, and then start it all the way. It's very strange. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it, though. What's our runway departure here? We're off of 5, which I believe is this end of the runway, so short taxi today. So now that we've got the right engine started, what we can do is we can start the left engine like that. Bring this to feather. And this should boot up here in a second, start spinning. Once we have the fuel pump on, we do. And there it goes. And then once it hits the NP percentage, hits about, I don't know, right 17, it starts to bottom out. Then you pop it in the auto. And then there you go. So now you have started the ATR. And that's the hard part about this plane. Everything else is pretty easy once you get it started up. The problem is, just obviously getting to that point. Okay, so we're going to put on our nav, VNav. Our target speed's already set. So our takeoff performance, let's see if we can let's do performance here. So our V rotate is 111. And what it does is it actually puts our thing here at V2 plus 10, our speed selector. And this is the only thing that I can't figure out is it does all of this for you. I put on VNav, indicated airspeed. It'll hit 135 and then it'll just stop. And I'm going to try something new this time to see if I can fix it. But we've got our power management to take off. What this will do is when we go to our notch mode here, it'll still keep the engines going so that we can continue our takeoff without stalling. And yeah, so we can turn off the engine start switch and everything is out, no lights on. Like I said, it's just like an Airbus. Turn on our taxi light and our strobe and our logo. Just get everything going. All right, so we've removed the gust lock. What this does is it keeps your propellers from going crazy in the wind. What we're actually going to do is we're going to back the plane up with the propellers. Just like that, nice and easy. So this thing moves real quick on the ground. I don't know if that's realistic, but you barely have to put any, see? You barely have to put any power into this thing before it starts booking it. Let's get our flaps set. I usually just do 15. It's only got 15 and 30 degree flaps. There's two settings over here. But yeah, you see that? I barely have the power in. And we're already up to 15 knots on the ground. It's very finicky. It's very, very fragile on the ground. Not fragile, but very sensitive. Anything that, any input just makes it fly off the tarmac. So you can see that the sun's starting to come up. It's going to be a great departure. This is one of my favorite airports to fly at in the entire world. It's just so pretty. It's such a cool approach, such a good departure. We're going to depart through those mountains over there, which will be awesome. Yeah, let's turn onto the runway here. Look at that. The only thing I haven't been able to figure out is this cockpit is exceedingly well lit, and I haven't found all of the buttons to turn off the brightness on some of these overhead lights. It gets very bright in here, and especially when you're flying around at night, it's a little distracting. But we don't need to use all the runway. Like I said, this thing is designed to take off quickly and on a short runway whenever possible. So you don't really need the full runway wherever you go. I've usually found myself taking off well before the end of the runway. Okay. Let's get rid of that. All right, let's start our clock, turn on our landing lights, turn off our taxi lights. Everything looks good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way to the red here. We're going to hold that. And that is going to set our takeoff power. You can see to the right. I haven't found out how to derate this thing yet. So until then. Whoops, it's the brakes. We don't want to hit that. Let's go to max here. I was talking all this game about how this thing could take off in time, and now we're running out of space, but there we go. Look at that. Alright, let's turn out here. This thing is very, very easy to control, but that also means it's very, very easy to lose control of. Okay. We are on the climb here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to reduce power to notch. And you're going to see our engines are going to pull back. This is like pulling back to climb power after takeoff in an A320. And we're going to go down here to power management and move this to climb. So now it's going to want to scale back the engines to maintain our speed and our rate of climb here. I don't believe I set our transition altitude, which is at 13,000. I'll have to set that in a second. We will turn on the autopilot here. We're LNAV VNAV. So it's gonna hold a 135 to increase our climb rate here. This thing doesn't move too quick. I can usually get it up to about 210 on cruise. And about 180 on the climb out is good, but for now we'll just leave it slow so that we can get everything checked off here. So we'll move our flaps out. It's going to follow a VNAV path. We might want to increase the speed here to like 160 just so we can get above stall with the flaps out. We will turn off our takeoff lights. Whoops. Don't think we need our logo lights right now. So our transition altitude is 13,000. There we go. So now it'll tell us the transition here. Look at that. Just amazing how pretty New Zealand is. I think this is the ortho scenery that I bought. It was like $7 or something before they did the New Zealand World update. But it's just incredible how this country looks. I can't believe it's real. Yep, as you can see, we've hit 160, so it's resumed its climb. This it's more like a VNAV flight level change climb at this point. And from what I've seen, it does follow VNAV very well. That's one of the things they got extremely right in this. I don't know how other releases don't do it. I don't know how complicated it is. But VNAV works for me for the most part. I've had zero trouble with it. It'll even start its descent and get angry with me for not changing the altitude. It'll just start descending on its own. It follows a pretty good VNAV path. You do have to manage the throttle. It's much like the CRJ. You can leave the power on this notch mode during climb and cruise. The second you get to descent, though, you are going to have to manage that or you will overspeed and rip your wings off. So, let's see, we've got our flaps out. Looks like we got a clean aircraft. Nothing to worry about. Let's see here. Anything on the checklist that we missed? Doesn't look like it. So like I said, you can click on the screen to increase the range here, or you can increase it down here. This is the more realistic option, but I like that they've added some touch controls here just because, you know, in real life this makes total sense. But in a flight simulator where you have to look down to touch this, you know, hit these buttons and then look up and make sure you did the right thing, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I wish that the touchscreen controls were more, there was, you know, something that told you what you were doing besides just clicking on stuff. But it is nice that they've at least thought of that. There's that sunrise. Just awesome looking. Once we get to cruising altitude here, we'll actually go back and we'll look at the cabin. I think the cabin's very interesting. They did fully detail it and fully model it, which is great. I think it looks awesome. Doesn't hit the frames too hard. As you can see, we're hitting 36 frames inside the cockpit on a prop plane. There's a lot going on, and this thing handles the frames very, very well. So very, very big fan of that. Let's see, we'll move this up to 180 on our climb here. So as you can see, when you change the indicated airspeed for your VNAV, it will dive down and immediately try to attain 180 knots. It doesn't progressively do it, which you know, is to be expected in a lower powered plane like this. In order to get to 180, you've got to dive down a little bit, and then once you get back to 180, it'll start ascending again. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. And it is nice to fly a prop plane like this, you know, kind of go low and slow instead of being in a rush everywhere. You know, I love flying in New Zealand, but half the time when I fly here, it's very cloudy, or, you know, I'm so, you know, I'm at 37,000 feet and everything down here just kind of looks like a picture. It's nice to fly under 20,000 feet and just kind of take a look at everything. I know I've said that in multiple plane videos, but it truly is nice to fly something regional like this that's not expected to go fast, that you can take on 1 hour flights just kind of around the countryside. So as you can see, since we increased to 180, our plane is working a little harder to maintain our vertical speed here. This is one of the trade-offs, so we can actually decrease our, let's go back to 170. So we trade lateral speed for vertical speed here, so that we can get above 10,000 feet, get those landing lights off. This plane does a really good job of teaching you the relationship between your vertical speed, your horizontal speed, because it drops like a rock. This thing has no problem descending. You know, in a lot of jets, if you miss your descent, you have to pull out the speed brakes. This thing, if you pull out the throttle, go full idle, it'll drop and meet your waypoint no problem. It has no issues descending. Just the ascent can get a little slow. As you can see, we're only up to we're just now past 10,000 feet, and we've been going up for a while. So one of the things I'm going to try, and this is where I bricked it last time, so I apologize if the video abruptly ends and then restarts here, or something stupid happens and you're like, what's going on? I bricked it last time just by doing this, and I want to make sure I get the right approach. So it looks like it wants us landing runway 2 or nav Zulu. Is there an ILS for runway 2? Does not look like it. There is a localizer. Yeah, we'll fly this thing ahead anyway. So we want RNAV Victor runway 2. There's an ILS for 2. Hold on. Let's do that. ILS. Hold on, people. See ILS for 20. Or no for O2. Or no for O2. ILS. There we go. ILS runway O2. Okay, we found it. So it should only be one ILS 2 north is what I want. From Dopke. Dopke 4A. Transition from Idubu. Execute. Okay, I think I know what I did wrong last time. Last time I hit that last where it said transition none. I hit that, and that is what bricked it. So if you hit a blank option on your flight plan for your transition, and it's, you know, the blue one, and it just says none, don't hit that, it'll brick it. So there we go. That's what I wanted to try. That's what was different. So now that we've got that out of the way, we do not have to worry about it anymore. So we can increase our range here. So as you can see, this thing also does your top of descent calculation and your cruising when you're going to reach cruising altitude. It's so weird. They put so much thought into so much of these systems, and people still say it's basic. That's one of my rants about the flight sim community, is you've got this really great add-on. You know, people have been hearing about it for months. It's been anticipated. It comes out. It's got very good system depth for a $20 add-on. That's the thing you got to think about. People were like, "Oh, I wanted this thing to be, you know, I wanted to be able to get type rated in a simulator on this plane." And it's like, it's somewhere between a full sim and a game. It has a custom FMS. It's got custom screens. It's got VNAV and LNAV. It knows how to do an ILS approach. All of these buttons work. They all do something. The system depth with the throttle and all the overhead stuff works. You can't simulate failures, so people are like, "Oh, it's not study level. I don't want it." And it's like, okay, I know from the get-go they weren't transparent about exactly what this plane would be, but you can't really get mad about being handed something that's $20 or you know, $13 and complaining that it's not the best thing on the market. That wasn't the intention, obviously, with the plane. The intention was to deliver something that's simulated an ATR somewhat realistically. I don't know anything about the flight model. I've had zero issues with you know, thinking it's been wrong. It's very light, it's very floaty, but so is the real plane. It's not very heavy. It just seems very snobbish and stuck up and spoiled to go, "Oh, this isn't a full system simulation depth of what we're used to, so I don't want it." And I think that's an attitude that has gotten Microsoft Flight Simulator into trouble recently, with people not releasing things that aren't completely finished to the standards that other people would want them to be. And I'm not saying that everything that comes out could be a Captain Sim 777 that's terrible, but you know, there's a lot of planes that come out in this game where it's like, okay, the basic stuff's there, it works, it's fun to fly around in, and then everyone just complains online because you know, if they shut off the fuel pump, then the plane still goes. Yeah, that's fine. I've seen a lot of people cruising around at, you know, flight level 25,000 with the flaps full out, still doing 200 knots. Like, yeah, it's not completely realistic in every regard, but if you don't abuse it and you treat it like it's completely realistic, it'll be realistic. So, I don't know. That's my rant about that. People always are expecting more than they get, and then when companies don't release what they said they were going to release on time because they need more time to fix it, they complain that it should have been released already. And it's like, well, what do you want? Do you want it to be out, or do you want it to be done completely? And on the flip side of this, there's the E175, which is another thing I said I would talk about. It's very, very raw right now. It does some things. The E175 is not a very complicated aircraft. You know, it's got like 4 buttons that you push to start it. It's not like, you know, this plane where you have to do a bunch of different stuff with the props and the prop brake and all that stuff. You kind of just hit a button and go. We will go to standard here. It works for what it is. It's obviously not completed at all. I'd say it's about 10% done. It's got good interior modeling and exterior modeling. The flight characteristics, the dynamics are a little wonky, but it turns on and it goes. You can load it up with a sim brief plan. You can pretend you're an ERJ pilot flying around in the Northeast or wherever you want to fly. And I think that one deserves a little bit more of a bad rap. They only sold it for $20 because they said that if you buy it for the $20 price tag, you're supporting the further development of the plane, which, you know, it's a catch-22. If they take the money and run, then at least I only spent $20 on a plane that's worth $20. But if, you know, in 2 years it's approaching full study level and I got it for $2 and it's now $80, then I helped get it there. So I know another one that I bit the bullet on was the TFDI Designs MD-11. That they keep saying it'll come out this year. I don't really have hope on it coming out this year. If it takes them another year, I wouldn't be surprised. That seems to be the going rate with stuff, is whatever early project development timelines are like, just take it and add a year to it, and that's what you'll actually get. I know PMDG was close to that. It took them a while. This is one that was supposed to take a while. And another reason that people, you know, a lot of people are kind of hesitant to buy this and are expecting it to be really good is that Milviz or Blackbird Simulations, one of the two, pulled their own ATR development because this one was proceeding a lot quicker, and they actually helped out with this. You know, and a lot of people are going to go, oh, well, they shouldn't have done that. Obviously, it would have been better, but you don't know that, and you don't know if they even would have completed it. It could have taken them another year. So instead of, you know, complaining about that, you can fly the one that we got. There we go. Change our view a little bit. All right. A lot of ranting done in this flight so far. So yeah, the flight plan stuff down here, you can change it to this and it'll give you, you know, it wants us to be at 240. I don't think we're going to hit 240 in this plane. It just doesn't go that fast. That's a little wonky. It simulates estimated fuel on board by your waypoint, estimates the time that it thinks you will get there. It's kind of crazy what's in this plane for $20. Besides the panel freeze, which I seem to have gotten around recently by just not clicking the wrong button in the FMC. I think the plane's awesome. I think it's so much fun to just cruise around it. You know, we're approaching 19,000 feet and not have to cruise over it. So you can see we're 80 miles from our top of descent, and I think this top of descent is calculated as we are right now. So it says we should have been at 19,000 feet by now. Obviously, we're not. We've slowed down quite dramatically. Let's see if we can give us just a little more power. Yeah, see, it doesn't like that I'm putting in more power like this. It went blue. It says that our climb power should be at 68 anyway. So it's got a weird auto throttle. You know, this tells it to put in more power, but it still wanted to scale itself back. So we've just left it in this notch mode. Whoa, those are way off. What the heck? Notch. Okay. Yeah, the other thing about the calibration on this, like I was saying earlier, I would highly recommend, if you have it, to use the TCA Airbus throttle quadrant that has the detents. That's going to be a lot easier for you to just pop it into a detent and know that you're at notch. rather than have to do it with an axis like in the Bravo that doesn't have notches in it or detents. It's just a little weird. It's not really explained. I think that's one of my biggest issues as well, is, you know, now I'm over it, but when I first loaded the thing up, there wasn't a tutorial online to watch because I bought it the second it came out. There's going to be plenty now, but you're going to have to watch a tutorial and really sit down and learn this thing to get all the little weird system kinks worked out just to start it. I had a weird issue with the fuel condition levers where I couldn't get these to move out of feather. I had to completely restart the game after unbinding every single binding that had anything to do with propellers to these two, unbound it, completely rebooted the game, turned it back on, and then I can move them. So if you get that issue, that's what you might have to do. Let's see. So it's got some maintenance stuff. I think this will be kind of cool in the future. They might do something like what Milviz did with the 310, where you can have a saved state, so that when you come back to the plane after a while, it's the same as you left it, kind of like you own it. And then it's also got your landing data, and this will also be calculated in the FMS when we get to that point. So let's boost this up to 210 here, I think. Let's just get up to 210, yeah. Looks pretty good. Oh yeah, cabin tour. So I've never flown in an ATR in real life. I know that they're a lot more common in short haul routes in other countries compared to the United States. Usually here you hop in a CRJ or an E175, something like that. But I've never flown in one, so it's pretty cool to see all this stuff. So it looks like this would be like kind of a cargo hold area. Kind of weird, but it makes total sense. You just throw all your suitcases up here, and then you go to the regular cabin. Because when you use the GSX profile, at least, to get people loaded, they load from the back. And I know somebody's sitting there right now that flies on a, they fly on a ATR once a month to for business or whatever, and they're like, yeah, of course that's how we do it. We're not stupid Americans. It's like, hey man, chill out just a little bit. This is all new to me. Everything looks really good. The interior cabin looks incredible for something that's $20. A lot of stuff doesn't even come with a modeled cabin at all, and this looks great. Goes all the way back. Here's the entrance with the staircase. It's just cool. I don't know. I think it's really cool that they modeled all of that. Just because. Let's see. Let's close that. Nothing else in this cockpit, as far as I'm aware, is something that can be clicked on. Like none of this stuff. There's no jump seat to fold out. None of the circuit breakers work. And I know that that's where people are going to complain, but I always ask people like that, have you ever actually touched the circuit breakers on a Phoenix A320 or the PMDG 737? Because the only people that do that are the 1% that want to, simulate a failure for some reason. People don't do that. That's not like a normal thing. So we'll put in cruise power here. You can see we're kind of stuck at 195 and 400 feet below our altitude here. That's another thing I've noticed, is I don't know if that's real life, like the plane just kind of putters out, but I'll get short of my speed and altitude marker by a couple notches, and then it'll kind of just call it. It just it says enough is enough. I'm done putting in the power. So as we get towards top of descent, you can see we can input some stuff here for our descent. Let's get the weather 30.27. Transition altitude is going to be what? 150. So here's our landing stuff. It's already pulled the weather from Christchurch, which is just cool. It does a lot of stuff by itself, which is nice. You don't have to manage it fully sometimes. It kind of just does its own thing. But we're coming up on top of descent here in about 40 miles. So let's see, altitude hold mode, like that. We will drop this down to, so let's test out VNAV here. If we go all the way down to about 900 feet, which is, let's go down to 2,000 and see what happens. 2,000 is where it says we'll pick up the glide slope. 2,000. And let's see, we'll go to, what am I talking about? Nav. Here we go, the nav radio. So we're at 109.9. Nav 1. And if we go to, let's see, heading hold here, switch the nav source up here to via the ILS. So you can see our course right here. This needs to be 16. So we will set the course like this. So now we've got our ILS approach all set up here. And we will flip it back to the FMS, go back to nav mode. So, yep, we've got our ILS approach all set up. That's the easy way to do it, is you just engage altitude in heading mode so that you fly straight when you're on a straight beam like this. Flip over to the ILS frequency, set it all up, set it up in the computer, and that's it. So now all we've got to do, what is this? Performance. Is that VNAV? What did I just hit? I hit direct to. No, I hit this. Huh, I've never seen this before. Well, there you go. You just cycle through it. So our approach speed is 110. That's what I was trying to do the whole time until I found that. I randomly found that. So our top of descent marker disappeared. That's something that kind of happens sometimes when you flip back and forth. Is it doesn't calculate your top of descent right. As you can see, it wants us to start descending down, which, you know, we can oblige if we want. We can let it do it. So it'll start descending here. And like I said, it's going to really want to increase our speed. So we're going to pull back our throttle to about 50%. You can see we're in manual mode now. We're at about 40% of our manual throttle. And that, I've found that 40% usually keeps you around your 210 knot speed that you want. See, there's another top of descent marker. See, now it's calculating our top of descent here down to 2,000. So we'll just let it do its thing. So that needs a little bit of work. The VNAV kind of loses track of where you are as far as your top of descent and where you want to be starting that. But if you just kind of manage it yourself, it'll slowly descend. So like I hit VNAV, it's not gonna plummet down to 11,000 and hold. It's gonna glide me down to it, which is nice. So maybe before you go adding and all that stuff, just make sure you're at your top of descent so you don't lose track of it. is what I would suggest. I really messed around with all this. I know that this stuff is all simulated too, which is kind of crazy. You know, the oxygen and stuff like that, nose wheel steering. There's the test. Yeah, ground map. I haven't gotten the terrain to pop up here. I don't think I'm doing it right, but it's fine. And I do know that it has procedure stuff here. I haven't been able to select it or access it. I don't know if I'm doing that wrong. I don't want to press buttons around back here. But it does have checklists right here that it will tell you what to do in, you know, in different situations. So let's see, our transition altitude is 15,000. So we'll go ahead and set this to 3027, which is what the QNH is in Christchurch. So it's a good thing we did that because we were way over where the plane thought we were. So this will give it time to descend a little bit further. A little bit faster, I mean. All right. Coming out of the mountains here of southern New Zealand, over the plains into Christchurch. And we haven't even checked out World Update 13 yet. I know that they did a lot of work in Hawaii. I did fly around in it a little bit when I first booted this up. I didn't really notice anything crazy with the textures. All the island still kind of looks like a blob in the ocean. I don't know if they're addressing that or what their plans are, but that was my thoughts on it. And they also updated Antarctica, I know that too. A lot of people have been flying around from the various research stations in Antarctica, just kind of cool. I don't know, I wish that it was like more simulated with how tough flying could be in those conditions, if it would have, I know that there's prop icing and stuff like that, but I don't know. I'm happy with my little ATR in nice, sunny, kind of cold. It is a little cold here. It's 1 degree Celsius, so we should actually start seeing some snow pretty soon. I love flying around in New Zealand when it's snowing. When everything's frozen, I love landing on like all the frozen lakes, especially north of Queenstown, like, you know, a little bit north of Queenstown, off the beaten path, there's a glacier that formed a valley that's like just one of the prettiest places to fly, and we'll have to take a little prop plane around there sometime. So we are still about 760 miles out from Christchurch. I wonder if this boost mode is what I'm supposed to be hitting when we're running out of steam on the climb. I wonder if there's like a kind of like the DC-6, you have to, when you get to a certain altitude and you want to climb above it, you have to introduce alcohol into the mixture to increase your climb performance. I wonder if there's something that we have to hit to increase our performance so that we can get above that 18,000 foot mark that seems to be the ceiling. But all things we will learn as we continue to fly the plane. And I do see myself flying this quite a bit. It is a nice little plane to fly around. You can trust the autopilot. That's one of the other things about this CRJ that I don't like, is sometimes you can't trust the autopilot, and you're over working on your computer or looking at something else, watching a video, and you look up and you're way off your path, or you're 10,000 feet above where you're supposed to be, or your plane is turned around and decided to start going in circles. So having something where you can at least know that when you point it in a direction, it's going to fly that direction is pretty nice. Okay. So we're coming into 11,000 feet here. And you can see our altitude targets are displayed on the map right now. So we know exactly where we need to be, so we can pull back on the throttle just a little bit to increase our descent rate here. So we can get to that 11,000 so we don't miss our window. It is nice having a plane with manual throttles, because sometimes you sit there in those nice short 737 or A320 flights, and you start your descent and then you space out and miss something because you're not paying attention to the plane. So having to manage the throttles is something, gives me something to do. Now we're in idle. So it should dive to maintain our 210. Yeah, that's a little much. It's a little much on the descent rate. 2,500 feet per minute is a little too quick. Alright, there's 10,000 feet. We'll flip our lights on. So I've noticed that there's idle, and then there's varying levels of idle. So right now I'm moving the throttles, and you can see that our RPMs are going, all the way down is set, 6, nearly 5. But if I go up, it goes almost to 25 before it flips into to manual. So it says I'm in idle right now, and as I'm moving, the throttle isn't moving physically, but you can actually control your RPMs inside that idle zone, which I don't know if that's intentional, because you'd think the prop would be moving, or the throttle would be moving around. Maybe this is the gap right here that I'm in on the actual, like on my physical throttle in real life. This is where we are, but it's stuck here and it won't move until we go down to full idle. So I don't know, something interesting. Increase the throttle a little bit so we don't fly below our altitude. Keep it there. Keep it at about 2,700. 2,700 seems good. So we should hit 6,000 and stop descending. We did not. Are we on VNAV? I need an altitude hold. Please and thank you. So the VNAV on descent still kind of wonky because we blew through our 6,000 foot checkpoint there. Any other VNAV, like on an A320 or the 737, it would have stopped us well before we hit 6,000 here. Probably would have stopped us around 7. It just looks like the VNAV didn't quite know what to do with that particular spot. So we'll take this opportunity to reduce our speed here so we don't fly into our approach too quick. Still can't see Christchurch off there. It's right underneath that hazy sunlight, I think. Let's see, our lights are on. The good thing is you don't really have to worry about anything up here, and there's no spoilers to arm. So you don't really have to worry about a whole lot when you set up to land. The only thing that you need to worry about is your speed. I have noticed that... let's see, let's pop VNAV back in. I have noticed that the landing gear, even if you check over here, the lowering and retracting, it says 170 to lower, 160 to retract. It's actually 160 to lower. If you pop your landing gear lever down and you're over 160 knots, it just won't pop out. Like the landing gear won't do anything until you hit 160. So you can't really use it to slow down. You've got to make sure that you're managing your speed on your arrival, because if you're at 210 knots, 10 miles out from the runway, you are going to miss your landing because your landing gear won't deploy in time, and then you won't be able to slow down. So I would watch that. If you plan on flying this, there's a lot of little quirky tiny things you got to do to make sure that if you do some things right, if you make sure that you're staying on top of it and doing what you're supposed to do with it, it'll do exactly what you want to do. Let's reduce just a little bit more. Get a little bit more vertical speed going down here, because the faster you're going down, the faster you're going. So if you reduce throttle, it can dive quicker. It's an inverse relationship. Alright, so as soon as we turn on this final path here, we're going to flip over to the ILS mode. Let's get our speed down to 170 here. So it's just all about managing your speed and your throttles on your descent. Usually when I fly this plane, I fly with track IR. I fly with track IR in most planes most of the time, but I find when I'm making videos, it's very jarring to watch somebody whip their head around. It's kind of hard, it's kind of hard to watch if you're not used to it. Just the camera constantly bobbing and moving around as I move my head around in real life. So it's nice for videos to not do that. So yeah, you can use reverse if you want. I haven't found that I've really needed to reverse very much. If the first couple landings I used it, and I found myself like stopping, 3,000 feet shorter than it predicted. It decelerates very quickly on the ground, which is nice. Actually, we will do this. Go to heading mode. Flip over to the ILS. So now we know when to intercept it. So this, obviously is our glide slope and our localizer here. Does a pretty good job of... it does a really good job of following it, which is another thing that you know, namely the CRJ I've had issues with, where it just doesn't catch the glide slope, and you'll miss your approaches. And it's not anything that you did wrong, it's just the plane isn't coded to do it right. That's one of the main problems with it, but this plane has no issue catching the glide slope here. So if I wait until that, so this line's right here, we'll hit nav, and now it should capture, there it is, turning onto the localizer. Maybe I hit it a little late, so it's gonna have to turn back a little bit, but we are on the localizer here. Let's get our throttles up, because we're maintaining 2000 right now. It's we can't use any of our vertical speed to maintain lateral speed. We're gonna have to bump up the power on these bad boys. So let's actually go down to 160. I know that I'm managing the throttles myself, so moving that speed bug around doesn't really do anything for me, but it's still nice to have a spot that you know to hit. So we're a little off center on the localizer here. It's just a sinker heading bug in case we need it. Still can't, there's the runway right there. So we're just waiting for that. We're waiting for that glide slope to pop down. Then we'll hit the approach mode here, and then it should snap onto the glide slope, and we should just follow that in. And then once we get about 5 miles out, I'll pop down the landing gear and we can set up for approach. And our final approach speed we're looking for again is 110. So we're about 7 or 8 miles out right now. Let's just pop down our throttles just a little bit. Just over speeding slightly. And we will pop out some flaps here. That'll actually help us maintain our 160 knots. Let's actually go down to 150. I'll set the speed bug for 110, just so I know where it's at. I can't go that low yet. Okay, so we will hit, where is it? I'm losing my mind. Approach mode. So now that I've hit approach mode, see the glide slope, it's a green box. And as soon as it captures it, it should go blank like that. So now we're on the glide slope. Just like an Airbus. Function's pretty much the same. So we're under 160 knots. So I think if I pop down the landing gear, yep, it will pop out. Pretty sweet. Landing gear not very similar, but kind of similar to the 737, where you can actually see the wheels underneath the plane when they're up. So let's see, we're looking for 110. 110 is what we're looking for. We've got all our lights on. Go around altitude is set. Don't need to worry about that. So, okay. Yeah, we will bring this bad boy in for landing. I think we can fly it manually from here. We've got it. AP disconnect. Yeah, there we go. Sometimes it takes a second for that warning to go away. I've noticed that if you hit, I have it bound on my yoke, where I hit autopilot disconnect. If you hit that twice, for some reason it reconnects the autopilot. So you just have to hit it once and then wait for the stupid warning to go away. Let's actually turn off our flight director. I'm following that instead of the localizer right now. So all manual from here. We've already been managing the throttles, so you kind of get a feel for what you need to do for the throttles by the time you're landing, which is nice. But we are all manual on the localizer here. Got it. And we didn't set our minimums. That's on me. We set that down here. So, my bad. Forgot about that. But we're fine. It's a clear day. We don't really need. We don't have any worry about missing our landing here. Nice and steady down here. We're a little tiny bit underneath the glide slope. So we'll just pop up a little bit, lose some speed without pulling off the throttle too much. As you can see, we're nearly idle on this whole descent. You don't really need a lot of power or you will just be way over your target speed. So
50, 40, 30.
So you get some float there at the end. This thing really doesn't like to touch the ground once you get that ground effect. There we go. Get the nose down. We actually will use some reversers here. See how quick you stop when you get those reversers out? And it's like instant. So there we are. Nice easy flight into Christchurch from Queenstown. Just like that. Turn off our landing lights, get our taxi light on. So I think that was a pretty good landing. We'll have to check Volanta and see how our... Oh, I just turned on to a runway. I didn't mean to do that. Forgot that there's a crossing runway here. Don't mind me. I've been playing a lot with FS HUD and FS traffic injector and all that stuff, and I found that it's just not worth the hassle. It is cool to have an AI ATC, but I found that like 9 out of 10 times it just doesn't really work. Approaches are really hard with it. It doesn't give you enough time to slow down, or it takes you way off of your route, and if you don't follow it, it gets really mad at you and won't give you directions. So I've not been using it, and I think it's been fine. Not as realistic, but you know, we're good. We'll just pull into this gate here. Not really too worried about parking this thing. I will show you how to shut it down, because it is weird. One of the things that I have noticed too is if you shut down and then try to restart, the prop brake doesn't work correctly sometimes. That was one of my issues yesterday when I was flying it. So let's get that. And then the parking brake is like this. We will turn on the gust lock. Okay, so flaps up, spoiler retracted, we don't have one, transponder, blah blah blah, strobe lights, landing lights, taxi lights go off, anti-ice comes off, so does that. The trim goes to reset, pitot heat off after a minute, so let's move this down to feather. After 30 seconds, we'll turn it off. So as you can see, this is feathered right now. So what feathering does is it doesn't stop it completely, but it basically turns the blade sideways so that if this engine did stop, it wouldn't spin anymore. I'm gonna turn that off. There we go. It's going down. Taxi lights go off. We're done with that. Yep, I got it. Let's hook up our little chocks of ground power. So we'll go to feather here. Wait for that to spin down. So basically just doing everything opposite of where we started, kind of like a real shutdown. But you just got to be really careful with the prop brake, because if you throw that prop brake in too quick, I think in real life it would obviously break the propeller. So wait for that to move down, then we'll throw on the prop brake, which should stop it. There it is. So stopped it. We'll turn off the seatbelt signs. The fuel pumps will go off. And we will shut this off. Oops, forgot to turn on the external power. So, yeah, that's what happens if you miss a step with your powers. Everything resets. So that's a good flight, I'd say, from Queenstown to Christchurch. Let's see here what our landing rate was. Pretty good. I'd say that's really good. 187 feet per minute, nice and gentle, under a G on the landing force. Pretty good flight. Pretty easy. Nobody got hurt. So that's cool. You can actually see the reflection in the visor. So if you guys like the video, please leave it a like. I know I don't upload as much as everyone else's favorite content creators, but you know, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is a hobby, and when I have time to do it, I'm more than happy to, and when I don't, it becomes, you know, something that goes by the wayside first out of everything else in my life. So if you guys enjoyed the video, like I said, please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will be back pretty soon for the next one.